All right, so today we're diving into a pretty crazy day, February 19th, 2025.
Wow, 2025 already, huh?
Yeah, it's come up quick.
It really is.
And we've got a whole stack of AP News articles here that give us a little peek into what President Trump's been up to in his second term.
Oh, this is going to be good.
And let me tell you, it's a wild ride.
I bet.
So let's jump right in. And I guess the first thing we got to talk about is, well, the Russia-Ukraine war.
Right.
Things seem to be getting pretty tense between Trump and Zelensky.
Yeah, it's definitely more than just words at this point, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, Trump's out there saying Ukraine's the one to blame for Russia's invasion.
Yeah, after 3 years of war.
3 years. And then on top of that, he says he's got a good chance of ending it.
Right. What?
It's just adding fuel to the fire. And then you've got him calling Zelensky a dictator without elections.
Yeah, that's not exactly diplomatic, is it?
No, not really. And then Zelensky comes back swinging, accusing Trump of listening to Russian disinformation.
Which is a pretty serious claim. You know?
Oh, absolutely. It really undermines trust, especially when you think about it in the context of the war, you know.
Right, like if Ukraine's questioning U.S. support.
Exactly. It's like they're fighting a war on two fronts almost. What's really interesting is that all this is happening while we have some pretty high-level diplomacy going on behind the scenes.
Like what?
Like French President Macron and British Prime Minister Starmer are supposed to be visiting Washington soon.
Oh, right.
And you can bet the Ukraine war is going to be the main topic of conversation.
Oh, yeah. Talk about walking into a tense situation.
Right. It's like here you have two key Western allies.
Who have been pretty vocal about their support for Ukraine.
Absolutely. Sending aid, the whole 9 yards. And now they're meeting with a U.S. president who's publicly questioning Ukraine's role in the whole thing.
It's like a political thriller or something.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, this meeting could be a huge turning point, not just for the war, but for, how the U.S. gets along with its European allies.
Okay, so we've got this public spat between Trump and Zelensky. We've got Macron and Starmer about to walk into a pretty tense situation. So where does that leave the U.S. and Russia?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting because you see, behind all this drama, there are actually some pretty big talks happening between the U.S. and Russia.
What, seriously?
Yeah, like high-level talks in Riyadh.
No way.
It's the first time they've talked at this level since the war started. Even Putin saying he's open to meeting with Trump.
Well, that's a surprise.
Right. But he's also making it clear that he wants to see some actual progress, like some preparation and some results.
So it's like, while all this crazy stuff's happening out in the open, they're quietly trying to work things out behind the scenes.
Exactly. It seems like maybe, just maybe, they're both looking for a way to calm things down.
I guess that makes sense.
And, oh, another thing, Putin kind of admitted that finding a solution to the whole Ukraine mess might take a bit longer than Trump was hoping for.
Oh.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting coming from him.
Maybe it means he's actually willing to negotiate.
Yeah, maybe. It really makes you wonder what they're talking about behind closed doors.
For sure.
Uh-huh.
Okay, well, let's switch gears for a minute and talk about what's happening on the domestic front.
Sure.
There's a lot going on there, too, isn't there?
Oh, yeah, definitely. One thing that caught my eye right away was the Trump administration deciding to label 8 Latin American crime organizations as foreign terrorist organizations.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. That was kind of surprising, wasn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, we're talking about criminal organizations here, not, groups like Al-Qaeda.
Exactly. So why call them terrorists?
Well, it's definitely different from how they've used that label before.
Yeah.
Usually it's for groups that are, directly threatening the U.S., groups with some kind of political agenda. But here, it seems like the argument is that these cartels are so powerful with their drug trafficking and human smuggling and all the violence that they deserve the terrorist label.
It's a bold move.
For sure.
But I've heard some people saying it could backfire.
How so?
Well, like by mixing up criminal activity and terrorism, it could give them an excuse to use the military against these groups.
Oh, I see.
It kind of makes you wonder how they're going to deal with organized crime from now on,
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not just a symbolic thing. It could really change how they use the police and the military. But on a totally different note, Trump also signed that executive order about IVF.
Oh, yeah, the in vitro fertilization thing, that seemed to come out of nowhere.
Right. I mean, it's a healthcare issue, a pretty personal one, too.
Yeah, what's the deal with that?
Well, the executive order is supposed to make IVF easier to get and, more affordable. It might seem totally random compared to everything else we've been talking about, but it shows that Trump's trying to push his agenda in all sorts of areas, even healthcare.
Yeah, no doubt. It's definitely something that will get a lot of people talking.
Yeah.
Okay, but what really grabbed my attention was all the stuff about the Department of Government Efficiency.
DOGE.
Yeah, they're making a lot of noise with all those federal firings and layoffs.
Yeah, DOGE is shaking things up, that's for sure.
Big time. The articles are talking about job cuts at all kinds of agencies, from the FAA to the National Science Foundation, even the Social Security Administration.
Right.
And it's not just the number of jobs. It's what those jobs do.
Yeah.
You know? Like, people are worried about safety at airports because of the FAA cuts, and if the Social Security Administration can't even help people anymore.
There's definitely a lot of concern about whether they're going too far too fast.
Yeah, they even want to give people money to quit their government job.
I know, right? It's like they're trying to completely reshape the government.
Yeah, some people call it streamlining.
And others call it dismantling.
It's a big story, that's for sure.
Definitely one to keep watching.
Absolutely.
Oh, and speaking of controversial moves by the government, did you see what Marco Rubio's doing?
Secretary of State Rubio, what'd he do?
He's skipping the G20 meeting.
The G20. In South Africa. He's not going.
Nope. Says it's because of their anti-American policies.
Huh. That's a pretty big deal, isn't it? I mean, to just skip a summit like that, what's going on there?
Yeah, it's more than just like a scheduling conflict. It's sending a message, you know?
Yeah, I get that. But what exactly are these anti-American policies?
Well, that's the thing. It's not totally clear yet. Some people think it's because of South Africa's stance on the Ukraine war, or maybe their ties with China. It could be a lot of things.
I see.
And, you know, this could have some ripple effects, too.
Like what?
It might hurt our relationships with other African countries. They might see this as a sign of disrespect, you know?
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. It's a delicate situation.
It is.
So, while all that's going on back in Washington, Kelly Loeffler just got confirmed as the new head of the Small Business Administration.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Another Trump supporter in a key position.
Definitely a significant move. I mean, the SBA plays a huge role in helping small businesses.
Right. So what does Loeffler's appointment mean for them?
It's hard to say for sure, but given her track record, some folks are worried.
Worried about what?
Well, she's always been big on deregulation and tax cuts.
Yeah.
So some people think she might favor big corporations over the little guys. It'll be interesting to see what she actually does.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, and speaking of confirmations, that hearing for Lori Chavez DeRemer is causing a stir. You know,
Yeah.
the labor secretary nominee.
Yeah, what about it?
Well, her stance on right-to-work laws is getting a lot of attention.
Oh, right.
You know, for those who aren't familiar, those laws basically let people work in union jobs without paying union dues.
Even though they benefit from the union's work.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a controversial issue. Some people say it gives workers more freedom, while others say it weakens unions.
And Chavez DeRemer's position on all this has been, well, kind of confusing.
Oh, how so?
Well, back when he was in the House, she actually co-sponsored that bill, the PRO Act, that was all about strengthening unions.
Right.
But now she's saying she doesn't want to overturn right-to-work laws.
That's a pretty big shift.
Yeah, and a lot of unions are not happy about it. They feel like she's turning her back on them. So this confirmation hearing is a big test for her.
Absolutely. It'll show how committed she really is to workers' rights and how she handles all the pressure from different sides.
It's a good reminder that in Washington, nothing is set in stone.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Oh, and there's also that case about the transgender military ban.
Oh, yeah, that one.
The judge is really grilling the Trump administration on their motives for that.
Yeah, that case has been dragging on for a while.
The administration keeps saying that transgender soldiers are bad for military readiness, but the judge doesn't seem to be buying it.
Yeah, it could have a huge impact on transgender rights and the military as a whole.
It's definitely a case to keep an eye on. Finally, there's that article analyzing Trump's second term so far. You know, they talk about how he's really taking charge and pushing his agenda through.
I read that one. It's like he's learned from his mistakes the first time around, and now he's got a clear plan. He's not afraid to make big moves, even if they cause a lot of controversy.
Yeah, it's a different Trump than we saw before. He's more focused now, more disciplined. It's like he's determined to remake the country in his image.
Whether you agree with his policies or not, you gotta admit he's leaving his mark on American politics.
No doubt about that.
And it's not just the individual things he's doing, it's the overall direction he's taking things.
Yeah, you're right.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is. It feels like everything he does just shakes things up.
And you know, it's really fascinating.
What's that?
It's how all these things we've been talking about, they're not as separate as they seem.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Like, Take the whole Ukraine situation.
Yeah.
Maybe Trump's trying to cool things down with Russia so he can focus on stuff here at home.
Like his government efficiency push?
Exactly.
It's like he's playing 4D chess or something.
Right. Trying to juggle everything at once.
Domestic, international, the whole 9 yards.
And we can't forget, all this is happening in a bigger context, too.
Yeah, of course.
Alliances, economic stuff, global power struggles, it all plays a role.
So, as we wrap up our look at this crazy day in 2025, feels like we've barely scratched the surface.
That's true. We've just pointed out some of the big themes, the big tensions that are shaping things right
It's
now.
a fight between Trump and Zelensky.
The U.S. and Russia trying to figure each other out.
All those controversial moves here at home.
It's all going to keep unfolding. Who knows what'll happen next?
Yeah, who knows? But as you follow all this, I think it's important to think about the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
How will what Trump does on the world stage affect people here in America?
Right.
Will his policies actually make the government better, or will they just make people lose trust?
Those are tough questions.
They really are.
But I think it's important to keep asking them.
Yeah, and to try to understand all sides of the story.
And to really think critically about the information you come across.
It's about connecting the dots, seeing the bigger picture.
Understanding that what happens today can have big consequences tomorrow.
Well said.
So, to everyone listening, remember, this is just the beginning.
Stay curious, stay informed, and keep asking those tough questions.
And on that note, we'll wrap things up. Until next time.
Keep exploring and keep diving deep.